depending on where you're joining from today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm with Third Stage Consulting, the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach the third stage of digital transformation success. I'm excited for our live stream today. But before I get into sort of the topic and introducing our other guests, my co-host today is Kyler Cheatham. So Kyler, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I always love the Tuesday live stream, so I'm excited to actually be live today.
Yes, usually a lot of times on these live streams, you're in the background sort of cheering on the audience and getting engaged with the audience on the chat. But you're actually on camera with us today, which is even better. And we brought an army of support with us too, because today we are going to do something a little bit different. This is actually very different from any sort of live stream we've done before. We're going to cover a lot of different topics related to digital transformation, but we're going to do this in more of a speed round sort of format. We're already having technical issues with one of our panelists here. I'm not going to name names.
Teresa's just way too excited. She threw her computer across the room.
I
She's just
did.
so comfy here.
Hello.
Good there. And there's Teresa coming in with a bang this morning.
Literally.
Sorry.
No problem. So what we're going to do today is we're actually going to do sort of a speed round Q&A sort of format. So usually if you've seen these live streams in the past, we'll ask questions with just one guest, maybe two guests, and we'll go deep into the conversation and, just sort of dive deep into different topics. This is meant to be sort of the opposite of that, which is more of a flyover, fast-paced view of digital transformation, and with a bigger group of experts, just trying to get sort of a gut reaction, knee-jerk reaction from the panel here. And I have a bunch of different questions I'm going to ask here today, and it's intentionally meant to sort of force this group of very talented consultants into a box, which as consultants, a lot of times we're not good at that. We're not good at just coming up with a single answer to some of these questions I'm going to have, but it's intentionally designed that way to sort of force the group into a box, into sort of a first knee-jerk reaction or a gut instinct on some of these responses, and they don't know what the questions are. I gave them a sample of, I think, 3 different questions I'm going to ask, but they don't know the rest of them, so they're going to be as surprised as the audience as some of the questions, although it's nothing too crazy. So the whole idea here is we're going to ask the audience or ask the panelists some questions. They're going to show us their response. I'm going to go around and sort of make sure we can read each of the responses. I'm going to ask the audience to chime in too and provide their responses to the same questions. If you agree with a panelist or any one panelist, feel free to say that. Or if you've got a different response that you want to add to the mix, please feel free to add that to the chat. And certainly if you disagree with anything we're saying, please chime in as well. We're trying to get a pretty diverse feedback on a number of different questions here. So if you could, for the audience sake, we're streaming right now live to LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. If you could just drop in the chat where you're joining from today, that would be helpful for us just to see where our global audience is and just to understand our audience a little bit better. Just tell us what city and country you're from, if you don't mind. And love to learn a little bit more about the audience here and appreciate having you all here live today. So with that all being said, I'm going to go around real quickly and introduce who we have on the panel discussion here today. And then we're going to jump right in and start asking questions. We're going to do real quick intros. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it. But I'm just going to go in the order that I see people on my screen, which I think is the same way the audience sees it too. So I'm going to start with you, Nate. So with me first for those of you watching just to the right of me is Nate Stroher, who is a practice lead at Third Stage Consulting based here in Denver. Nate, thanks for being here today.
Good morning, Eric. Excited for the format. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. And then we also have Michelle Weiss, who's senior manager at Third Stage Consulting. Michelle, thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
She's joining us from New York today. And then Teresa Richardson is a director at Third Stage Consulting in the U.S., joining us from Arizona. Welcome to the show, Teresa.
Hello.
That's Teresa. And we have confirmed that we can read her handwriting and everything, so we're good there.
And then awesome.
Yes, it is. And then we also have Greg Benton, who is our Chief Strategy Officer at Third Stage Consulting, based out of Denver as well. Greg, thanks for being here.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Good to see you.
Thanks for being here. And then the guest that is joining us from the furthest from where I am today is that recognition goes to Clifford Martin, who's joining us from our office in Cape Town, South Africa. So Clifford, good afternoon, almost evening. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, it's fantastic to be here. A good day to everybody around the world, and very excited to be representing Africa. So please pop into the chat if you're based in Africa. Thank you.
Yeah, good point. If you're based in anywhere, if anyone's based in one of the cities we mentioned, Denver, Arizona, New York, or South Africa, or countries, I should say, drop that in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. So just to sort of get started on things here with this format, what we wanted to do, again, we're going to go through a lightning round. We're going to get the panel responses here. We're going to get audience responses to each of these questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to give the panel just a few seconds to respond to each of these questions, and then we'll ask the audience as well. But the first question I have for the panelists here, and again, just sort of in the theme of giving a broad-based view of what makes digital transformation successful, just to kick things off, first question I have for the panelists here is, what is the biggest key to digital transformation success? So if you could just write it down and Teresa already had her answer ready. In fact, we were joking before we went live that your answer to everything is probably going to be change management.
It is.
What the question is, it's just change management. That's all it is.
Efficiency.
All right, so I'm actually just going to run around here, and it looks like we've got a few responses already. So Nate says buy-in is important. That's definitely a good one. Similarly, Michelle says executive support. Teresa says change management. Greg says clearly understood objectives for change. And then Clifford says defining transformation. Very good responses. So I guess I'm going to pick on you, Teresa, just to elaborate a little bit why. And I'm only asking you this because I know you already had that piece of paper pre-written with change management.
For everything.
So why change management? Why do you think that's the most important thing?
It's important because, in my opinion, the entire organization needs to buy into it. They need to adopt it and use it. If you spend millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars on a transformation and nobody uses it, you have a problem. So in order for it to be accepted and take hold, your organization needs to understand it. They need to buy into it. They need to support it. They need to be involved in the process and use it.
Makes total sense. And then Greg, can you show your response again? I think you had, was it clearly defined goals and objectives?
Yeah,
Yep.
Many times organizations go into the idea that they're going to digitally transform. They really don't have it well defined. They really don't have the objectives for the outcome of that digital transformation. In other words, if we implement all of the technology, the people, the process changes that Teresa was talking about, what is our return going to be? What is the organization going to look like in a year, in 5 years? And I think very often organizations don't put enough planning up front or strategy up front into what's going to be needed to accomplish that change. And not just paving cow paths, as we say, with the new technology, but actually changing the organization for the better.
Yeah, that's a good point. And actually, what you're saying actually helps enable some of the other stuff, like executive support, the buy-in that Nate and Michelle talked about. Certainly, change management can be more effective when we have clearly defined goals and objectives. I'd also be curious from the audience, which one of these panelists do you agree with? Do you disagree? Or what did we miss? What would you add to the mix? I'd love to hear from the audience here in terms of what you think the most important key to digital transformation success is. So please feel free to drop in the chat. Also, as we're going here, if you have questions you want to ask the panel, be happy to take those as well. They don't know what's coming anyway, so we might as well take some audience questions as well. So please feel free to chime in with any questions you want to ask here. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question here. And it's somewhat similar, but we're sort of flipping it a little bit from the previous question. And that is, what is the number one reason why digital transformations fail?
Oh man, how much paper do you guys have?
Teresa, one piece of paper, apparently.
It's all right. It fits.
She didn't even bring a pen. She just already had that prepared. She just
I've been prepared since last night.
all
And
right.
actually, before we get to all the responses here, I'm gonna show a comment here that we had on YouTube, and their response here on YouTube was defining the transformation for the business and for people. So that was an interesting point of feedback, and I agree with that. People, the better they understand what the goals and objectives are, the better off it's going to be. All right. So the number one reason why they fail, Nate, you said lack of vision or goals. Clifford says misaligned expectations. Michelle says wrong people driving change. Interesting. Come back to that one. Teresa said, "Oh, what?
Change management.
Wait,
Sorry, I
Teresa,
just saw the
change
balloon.
management." And then wait, Greg has a balloon. How did you? Well, I have a lot of questions.
Inflated expectations.
Inflated-
I like it.
That's
You know,
great.
I didn't know these questions were going to come up, but I did have the balloon.
That is awesome.
You
I
just
can't wait
have
to see what
spare
other prompts
balloons
you
just
might
in
have.
case you need it, like to burst someone's bubble. You just have spare balloons laying around. That's funny.
Right.
That's super funny. So, Michelle, show me your response again. I remember I wanted to come back to it. No, I already forgot what you said, but it was really good. Oh, we lost. Hold on 1 second here.
While Michelle's queuing
Yep.
up, just a reminder for our audience, Michelle represents all of our Latin American clients down there. So, Michelle, if you want to say hi to our Spanish speakers in language, definitely feel free to answer anything in Spanish today.
Okay, I will.
Hola. That's about as much.
Thank you
I
for that lesson, Eric. That was
I used to have a boss that said, I know how to speak Spanish. Salsa, taco, guacamole. You know, I'm like, that's not Spanish. I'm sorry.
All the essentials, definitely.
So the wrong people driving change. Explain what you mean by that, Michelle, or why that's a risk or a failure point for transformations.
What I was getting at is sometimes the people that are driving the change aren't the people that the workers, feel like they want to follow or, respect. So I know that that's happened in a couple of projects where the people that are driving that change aren't actually the ones that are respected by the organization. And so.
Right. Like they don't have credibility or.
Credibility, that type of thing. But they get put on a project anyway, just because maybe they have the time or they have a certain role, but it doesn't mean that the people that need to change are going to necessarily want to because of the people that are driving it.
So the people driving change, do you ever see where the people that are responsible for driving change are the ones that are most stuck in the past? Like they don't want to drive the change, or they want to drive their definition of change that maybe doesn't align with the overall goals and objectives, or what have you seen there?
More that, people just decide not to do it because they don't respect the person, or the person doesn't have the power to really, drive that change. So I think selecting the right people to manage that, or to make sure that they're communicating down to the people that are having to do the change, having those people well selected is really important. So that's why I put that answer.
Gotcha. So here's a comment or question that I think only you can help us with, Michelle.
Yeah. I was like, no, people are talking to us in Spanish. So.
Las personas equivocadas impulsan el cambio. Yeah. So, Elias, sorry. Elias is saying that, the wrong people are the ones pushing the change. So it's kind of the same thing that I'm saying.
Nice. So we've got some Spanish translation happening in the chat, which is perfect.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for that comment.
My glasses to read that little small name, so I apologize if I butchered that.
It is hard to read for sure. And then Greg, we had to come back to it. Your prop is highly effective, as is the message on your balloon prop. But the comment here is inflated expectations is the best answer with balloon. But so at least one person watching agrees with you, Greg. Tell us what you mean by that, or why is inflated expectations? Why is that a problem, or how does that lead to failure?
Well, I think that people believe that going into a digital transformation means that everything will come out on the other end as a technology change without any real effort, and support the organization in the way that is envisioned going forward. And that often comes with a lack of clear transformational plan, objectives, and even the governance internally to make that happen. And very often the strategy piece and really understanding where you want to go as an organization, this kind of goes along with what do you see as success for digital transformation, is understanding what change is going to happen and how it's going to affect the organization and the return on investment as a result.
Gotcha. Yep. Makes total sense. And I agree with that. There's a lot of, that seems to be a root cause for a lot of other problems that people mistakenly think is the real cause of failure. For example, change management, back to Teresa's point, if I have unrealistic expectations, chances are fairly high I'm going to cut change management because I had unrealistic expectations and I need to force fit my project into a timeline or budget. So you end up cutting something like change management, and then you blame change management for the reason why the project failed, when really maybe it was because you had unrealistic expectations all along. A couple other comments here just related to that question. Comments from the audience here on YouTube. Tanash on YouTube says lack of support from management. Sam Graham, who is with us, joining us as a regular, is happy to translate if required. He's joining us from Spain, so he can certainly. I assume he's fluent in Spanish. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Sam, but I assume you're talking about Spanish since you're living in Spain now. And then another comment from Patricia on LinkedIn says sponsored ghost. So that gets back to the driving the change. Money, authority, and need. Man, money, authority, and need. I've never heard of that acronym. That's from Vijay on LinkedIn. So thanks for that comment. I'd be curious to hear what you mean by that. I've never heard of that acronym before. So, and then one last comment here. Last but not least, this is from Parisa on LinkedIn. Another big challenge is not taking full ownership of your digital transformation or relying too much on the system integrators. It's a really good response, and I totally agree with that. You do have to have a certain amount of ownership, and back to that driving change, you can use outside help, but you need those internal faces and credibility experts within the organization to drive the change. Okay, so I'm going to get to the next one here. Here's an interesting question that I think we don't ask ourselves enough, which is, what is the biggest potential benefit of digital transformation? So when you look at all the clients we've worked with, what is that, what's the number one benefit or potential benefit that you see clients realizing, or that they should be realizing, but they're not? Give you a few seconds to respond there. Biggest potential benefit of digital transformation.
I feel like we need some Jeopardy music, like do 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 do.
Totally agree. There's we're talking about keeping it simple this first time, but next time we might have music. We might have keeping score. Well, I don't know. We'll figure it out. But we thought we'd try this format first and see how it goes. But I like
so at Staples they have this little button.
Yeah,
it says like that'd be really cool to have like teams and like Family Feud type thing. Will be like third stage Family Feud. That would be amazing.
I like where your head's at.
Yeah, I like it. We're heading that direction for sure. All right. So what have we got from the audience or from the panel here? Biggest potential benefit. Let's see. Clifford says redefining the business model. I'm going to come back to that. That's a really good one and interesting. I'm intrigued by that. Nate says reactive to strategic.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Oh, gotcha. You become less reactive, more strategic as an organization. Teresa actually has a new card here. Organizational buy-in and change. What's that last word?
Change management.
Change management.
Of course. All right. Greg says unified and interoperable data and systems. Interesting. I want to come back to that too. Michelle says time savings with streamlined processes. Let's start with you, Clifford. Talk about this business model concept, redefining the business model. Maybe help us understand what you mean by that, or an example of that.
Thanks, Eric. So I think if one's not redefining or changing the way you do things, whether that's creating new products or launching new capabilities or engaging with your customers in a different way. You're probably just optimizing what you currently have. And in my view, certainly that's not true. That's not true transformation, let alone digital transformation. So how we leverage emerging technologies to create new models, new services, new products, or collaborate with new, fellow value creators in the broader ecosystem together to outside our organization to deliver more value to existing or new customers. So fundamentally, I think one needs to be doing something quite significantly different in terms of creating new products and services, or delivering to new customers, or delivering in a different way to existing customers. But something fundamental has to change in the business model if we're going to be doing true digital transformation, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good, and it gets back to the point that that was discussed earlier around having the clearly defined goals and objectives, and within that, defining what you want to be as an organization when you grow up, and redefining that business model where appropriate. So those are really good points. Let's see, Greg, you had one too. I wanted to come back to the interoperability, but your response is more complete. Unified and interoperable data and systems. Tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah, when many organizations are looking at the digital transformation, they're placing a lot of emphasis on technology for technology's sake, and making a change. They're not looking at the myriad number of systems, data sources, and information that has kind of evolved over time in the organization and created silos of information and non-interoperability across the organization. Pulling it together into a new system is the opportunity to re-engineer that entire process so that data can be pulled into reporting structures that can provide a single source of the truth in the organization. And instead of celebrating the entire haystack of information systems and data, we should really celebrate being able to find the needle in that haystack. And that's what moving to a single unified platform can do.
Right. Yeah. Well stated. And that's sort of something that ties together the big picture of digital transformation, and looking across the entire enterprise too, your system and data and processes across the entire enterprise. Now, Nate, you talked about becoming less reactive, more strategic. Tell us about that, or what kind of benefit, or how have you seen that unfold with clients that you've worked with over the years?
Well, typically, I think when we are engaged by a client, they're dealing with systems that are anywhere from 5 to 20 years in the past when they implemented them. They're dealing with technology that will show them what happened in the past, dealing with numbers and figures that were created 1, 3, 6 months in the past. What we do is, with a digital transformation, is allow them to put a technology platform in place that gives them the vision to see data and to deal with real-time data. And it's not just having that at your fingertips, but it's knowing what to do with that data. If you can look at sales figures and react instantaneously to changes in the market. And a great example is a year and a half ago, when we started this global pandemic, organizations had to deal with something that we've never dealt with before. So it's having that real-time data and being able to make those decisions on a instantaneous basis versus looking at stuff that happened 3-6 months in the past really shifts the whole view of an organization. And it doesn't happen overnight, but it at least is putting the technology in place that allows you to make that shift over time.
Yeah, which leads to cultural change too, right, Teresa? Right, you were
Yes.
Your comment was related to change management. Tell us about the cultural change.
Well, so I think from me, I look at the bigger picture of what's going on, because digital transformation, in my opinion, it's ongoing, right? You have new releases, you have new upgrades. What the biggest opportunity would be is to help your organization adapt and embrace change, because change is ongoing. It's always going to happen. I like to say, the only ones that didn't listen to change are the dinosaurs, and they died out, right? So you have to change, you have to evolve, you have to embrace what's coming. And I think for me, the bigger picture is to really help those behaviors to be positive, embracing, because it's going to happen again. Businesses change, strategy changes, market changes. What you need to do is tap into your organization's willingness and openness to change to make the organization better.
Yeah.
Continuous improvement. CI.
Yeah. Well put. Very well put. A couple audience comments too, or responses here. VJ on LinkedIn says ease of doing business, cost control, on-time delivery, better customer support. Those are some really good specific business benefits. Over on YouTube, comment is improve service delivery to internal staff and external stakeholders. And then another comment here, I find the comment about enhancing or creating better efficiencies you don't see as digital transformation, and that's from LinkedIn. And then I've been called out over on
I was hoping you were going to show that one.
on YouTube. I have been told that I need to keep it simple, real, and meaningful, and use less consulting language. So I'm going to try my best. I am guilty of that. And as Kyler knows, I love buzzwords, so I tend to use buzzwords all the time, just because I'm a huge fan, right?
Yeah. Well, you haven't said it depends at any point in this live stream yet. I mean, we still have 30 minutes or so.
Just give it time. Just give it time, Kyler. I could. It's like a drinking game. You know it's going to happen at some point. It's just a matter of when and how often.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry. Can you go back to the comment about more efficiencies? What did you say about that?
This one here. Find the comment about enhancing or creating better efficiencies you don't see as digital transformation.
Okay.
I think that's related to my comment about how does one, I guess it comes down to how does one define digital transformation. And I was making the point, in my view anyway, that merely improving efficiencies and optimizing the status quo is not, in my mind anyway, digital transformation. You're not really transforming anything. So I think it was that, Teresa.
Okay. I was just going to add that when you create the culture of inclusivity and people are comfortable on asking questions and, maybe pushing back a little bit, that's how, in my experience, how other opportunities for improvement come to the table, because they are invested. They want things to be better. They want to be part of the solution. And a lot of times when you have less voices or quieter conversations, that's when you need to worry, right? But if you can help with that change management attitude or mindset or behavior and just welcome those issues and put them on the table and talk about them, it really enhances your digital transformation, because we know it's not just the technology, it's people and process. So if those things don't align, you're in trouble. So I thought that was a pretty good comment, because it does wrap into each other, and we need more voices speaking than quiet people at the table. So
yeah, absolutely, especially from a change and buy-in perspective, as well as even just defining what the future state's going to be, all that stuff.
Yes.
Okay, so before I get to, I have some questions that toward the end I'm going to ask that are more super simple, like either or, multiple choice sorts of questions. I'm going to hold off on those. But actually, I'm going to skip to a question that I have for you. Well, it's for the whole group here, but Teresa is really going to like this one. What do you consider the most effective change management tactic in digital?
Ooh. Are we all going to get around at this, or do you want me to go first?
Yeah, everyone will do the normal format. I'm just saying that I know that you particularly are going to be super excited about that question, more so than maybe even the rest of us.
There you go. And just a reminder to put those questions here in the chat. I know we have one from Brett on LinkedIn about some SaaS products and inflation, so we'll get to that here, but we definitely want to make it as interactive as possible as well. So I'll also comment that I think, Clifford, you need to meet Sam Graham, who is the definition king, too, and I think you two would be friends. So.
I'll reach out to him. Thanks.
All right. So Clifford has linking the change to business strategy. It is the most effective change tactic. Teresa says communication. Interesting. Greg says clear guiding principles, governance. And then Michelle says change agent team with the right people. And Nate says executive sponsorship. So let's start with you again, Clifford. Linking the change to business strategy. Why is that? Why is that so important or so effective as a change strategy?
Yeah, because I think, we have to, Eric, we operate in an industry that's primarily focused on the technology and focused on a software, defining a project as a software installation. And it has to be about a solution implementation and a sustainable business solution. So I'm always very passionate about defining these projects from a business perspective and framing it in terms of business outputs. And I think when you get the end user, the business community, when you really get them excited and on your side and supporting the change, is when they are able to see it through a business lens and understand how this transformation project is going to contribute to and enable their strategic objectives. And if we can't paint that picture for them, then I think we're in trouble, and we're back to this, we're just bringing about technology for the sake of technology. So, yeah. Defining it in business terms, I think is very important.
Yeah, great point. I agree with you on that. Teresa, why communication? And first of all, maybe that's a pretty broad category. Maybe explain what it is and
why. Yep. I left it as broad because it really impacts everything from, defining the strategy to delivering the message of the strategy, from having your top CEO level or executive level have the right messaging and making sure the communication cadence is on point. Someone said something about your sponsor ghosting, right? That all comes back to communication, making sure that the right people are saying the right messaging or updates at regular intervals and cadences, and really addressing the fear that people have around change. So you have this innate, like, oh God, what's going to happen? Am I going to lose my job? I don't know how to do this. And it all comes from, how do we address this? It's through communication. We need to talk to our teams. We need to let them know what's going on. We need to link, like Clifford said, the business objective to that level of influence. This is how it's going to impact you. This is why we're doing it. This is how we're going to help you. What are your ideas? It's the communication, and it's the conversation back and forth.
We lost you, but it was like a perfect moment. Like, that was like perfectly well said, and it was just like, bye,
Bam.
Yeah.
Drop the mic, baby.
Her work here is done, and she just.
That's it. So the term communication was meant to be broad, because I think in any change initiative, that conversation back and forth needs to happen across everything you do.
Yeah, totally agreed. And actually, here's a comment from an audience member here from Prisa. She agrees with you. A lot of it comes down to how you communicate the change. And then she also included a link to an article that we have on our website about better communication and training. But here's another one that I want to get your thoughts on, Teresa. I think it's supposed to say, I think better than communication is centralized communication. What are your thoughts on that? And that's another question or topic.
Yeah. Well, I do believe that the communications do need to be, central, and it needs to go out, but also it needs to be a two-way street, right? So you can't just have your top level talking and moving. It has to be, yes, we're doing this. How is it going for you? Let me know of your issues, et cetera, et cetera. In my opinion, I just had a client that, thought having one or two communication messages about, hey, we're doing this. This is the go live date, and it's not enough. They need to understand that at the end of the day, an organization is made up of people, and people communicate. If they don't communicate and people are silent, that's when you have problems, in my opinion.
Yeah. And Michelle, what did you have for your response again? It was one I wanted to come back to. I just don't remember what it was. Change agent team with the right people. I guess maybe just help us understand, what is a change agent team and what do you mean by the right people?
Sure. So a change agent team is a group of people that are going to help with the transformation at a lower level, right? So they're not the worker bees, but very close to them. that know what the processes are and can help drive the change because the people look up to them. So a little bit with my past answer, right? So the right people in those roles, they get trained, they help trickle down the information, but they also help trickle it up, right? So they are trusted by the employees. They, again, know the processes well, so they can really drive that change along with, all the communications and everything like that. But it's a very specific group of people that you select to help you drive that a little bit more specifically, right? So,
Yeah.
and I know Teresa probably knows a lot more about that, but I think it's definitely on really big projects, a really great thing to put in place.
No, I completely agree with you. And to your point, just because you have a change agent who has the time doesn't mean they're the right change agent to have. Also, I've seen people that wear dual hats. So it's change agent, PMO, janitor, whatever. You're wearing too many hats, so you can't really be. You can't put the attention needed. It's a lot to be a change agent because it's an important role. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed.
Well,
Good.
I also see the opportunity to establish clear guiding principles with the organization, making everyone in the organization really a change agent for the way that it goes forward, but we're adhering to the same guiding principles. Kind of to the comment, centralized communication and governance throughout the organization needs to be established up front so that when change is agreed to, it can actually be accomplished by the organization all the way through.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to add that I think that that's really interesting because when I saw the term centralized communication, the first thing I thought was, it makes sense, but it also runs counter to what a lot of cool, buzzy sorts of stuff within the management world, things like decentralization and flat organization, servant leadership, agile, all the stuff that's sort of pushing more of a democratic approach to transformation, and which I think there's value in that, but I think there's also value in having that top-down, clear vision, clear objectives, centralized communication. You can have the other stuff too, but you also need that clarity at the top, which I think that gets overlooked a lot in the name of agile, name of servant leadership, and all this stuff.
What I'm thinking centralized communication might have also meant is consistency, right? The same message, not different people giving different messages because everyone's in charge of their own communication for their areas or regions, but really kind of having a message that then can go out, helps keep that project going the way that it needs to, right?
Yeah. I would like to add unified communication because things change. Like digital transformations don't follow a smooth path. Things happen. So as long as that communication is unified, I think that's the best way to do it as well. And I know I have seen some things in the chat here that are pretty interesting topics of conversation. I'm sure we can't go through them all, but one of the things that I'd say is the worst thing to do is email. When you communicate via email, I don't know about you guys, but I've got like 10,001 emails and it's click, 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 click. So in terms of the question on the best ways to communicate, one of the ways you want to stay away from is a one avenue of communication, meaning one way to do it. There needs to be multiple ways, and you should not do it just by email alone. So we had some pretty creative ways to do it in one of my clients, and if we have time later, we can talk about it. Like Hollywood lights and spotlights and people singing RESPE. I'm only joking, but it was really cool. It was. You got to make it fun. You got to make it engaging. You have to make it attractive to hear. That's my point.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's a comment as a follow-up that the comment about centralized communication, the follow-up to that is when I said centralized, I mean more like the method or platform that is used. Email isn't the best, which is what you just said, Teresa. Use something more like Yammer or Microsoft Teams, etc. So it's some good points there.
Yeah, in my opinion, you need to take several avenues of that communication path, because if you only use like electronic or you know, a posting. It's just gonna, you know, you gotta put it in their face, make it engaging and helpful and useful, and maybe get a giggle, and then they pay attention. You know, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Here's a question. That's actually a question from the audience, but I want to ask it as our next sort of speed round here, and it's a really controversial question potentially. This is from Sam. But do all CEOs, and I'm going to rephrase this a little bit. Let's just say, do most CEOs actually understand what a digital transformation really is? And I'll get to the second part of this question in a minute, but it's just simple yes, no on this one. So it's a pretty easy response. But I'll ask you to elaborate on this. So do most CEOs actually understand what a digital transformation really is? And this is a really important question, I think, because if they don't, then there's a whole other set of problems we've got to deal with. So sort of a yes, no, do most of them understand? So Teresa says engaged CEOs, yes. And the typical consulting answer, you've got your your disclaimer, your caveat in there. Nate says yes, most of them do. Michelle and Clifford say no, most of them don't. And then what does Greg say?
I say yes, most.
Yes, most. Okay. So let's.
But even Teresa, you have to break the tie.
Yep.
Yes. I mean, I think as our jobs as consultants, though, from third stage perspective, we have that executive strategy session. So in my opinion, yes, because we come in and we have the discussion and we talk about what it is and what it's going to entail. So the CEOs and COOs and the people that I've worked with, yeah, they are engaged, and because it's our job to make sure they stay engaged. It's an investment. And we need to have them get the most out of the investment. So if you don't hire us, then no, they're not.
I was going to say, they need us to understand what it really entails.
Actually, I was going to, in all seriousness, I was actually going to ask that. So in a hypothetical world where client doesn't hire us or hire someone to help them stay engaged, is the natural inclination of CEOs to be, and let's just talk about executive teams in general, because it's not just the CEO. You need your CFO, COO, CIO, all of them. You need the entire executive team to be engaged. Do you think in general, in most organizations, the executive team is engaged enough to make a transformation successful?
I got to hear from Clifford. You got to do it. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, whether the CEO is engaged enough to make it successful, I think generally, I think they certainly try, and the intent is certainly there, because obviously these are massive enterprise-wide projects. They consume lots of resources, lots of time, lots of effort. So there's a high profile and visibility. But I guess it links back to the earlier question: do they understand what it is? And I don't think organizations and executives take enough time to break it down and really understand what it means for their organization. Because let's face it, there's no real uniform or industry standard definition for digital transformation. And I think we also get too caught up on the digital side of it and too little on the transformation. We forget that this is, as to the points that Michelle and Therese and others were making, this is a major transformation organization that touches people, process, technology, ways of working, roles, responsibilities, everything in the organization. So I think in a nutshell, Carla, I don't know that executives and steering committees take enough time to define for their organization what digital transformation means and what the expected outputs are.
Yeah, and I think that's what Sam was getting at, and that's why I tried to, make that connection, is that transformation or ERP systems by definition need to be unique to that business's strategy and overall needs. And I always love how you and Sam, you really dig into what is a transformation, what does it mean for your specific company, and unless you're able to define that as the leadership team, then there's no way to be successful unless we have that alignment. So Sam talks a lot about that in our guest blogs, and that's why I wanted to hear from your opinion, because I think you follow kind of the same approach.
Yeah. And let me make one last comment on that, Carla, and it's a whole different topic, so we won't go down that rabbit hole. I do think too often the systems integrators set the narrative about what the project is or what it is not. And there's not enough pushback from the client executive side. So, but I know we've had lots of conversations on this topic, and I won't take us off in that direction. But I did want to make that point.
Yeah, And we do have that ground control episode, and I'm sure Parisa will help us pop that in there. She also just popped in our new white paper on Africa as well. So when it comes for more on the SI, and my favorite buzzword that Clifford taught me, professional skepticism, which I say in every conversation at least 10 times a day.
All right. And just some audience responses to this question, which seems to be generating a lot of responses. From LinkedIn, I will channel Eric here and say it depends. LOL. Thank you. I knew that was going to come up. Now I don't have to say it, Collar. Someone said it for me. And then depends on the market, I guess, from Juiced on LinkedIn. Thanks for being here again today. And then there was one other comment I wanted to. Here's a really interesting comment from LinkedIn. Not always, in terms of executive sponsorship, not always no. Most executive leadership I've read about is in their nature to delegate off things to their direct reports and rely on them to deploy out the communications tasks, etc. I need to hide the comment to get to the rest of it here. At that point, the silo is just reinforced and you lose drivers and more. Here, VJ has some very strong, concise language here that he uses to describe the situation. No, they delegate and dream that the system will go live. Very, very strong language there. And I do agree, though. Actually, there are a lot of executives that do think that way. They just want to push it off. They want to delegate and assume that the team's going to take care of it. I want to get to you, though, Michelle, because you said no, right? You said no. Most executives are not engaged. Is that correct?
Well, I think that they might not realize the full spectrum of a digital. So I think it's already been talked about that it's not just having a new system, but it's implementing new processes. It's teaching, training, getting engagement. Like there's so much more. And, to what you said earlier, Eric, a lot of the times change management gets cut. There's no time. And that's like one of the most important things to really make it happen, right? I mean, the right software is important. Putting the right processes for your business is important. But if people aren't going to accept, and do what you're trying to implement, it's not going to work. If people go back to Excel and ignore your system, right? So, I maybe, obviously some do, but I think that in most cases, they don't really get that whole holistic. And I think that's what we do in the executive strategy session, right? We ask the questions that get them thinking about,
Right.
Oh, have you thought about that? Have, kind of get their thought process going as to what it really does entail.
Yeah. Well said. Agree with that. So, and actually, I'm just going to share one last comment with the audience, and then I'll move on to the next sort of the speed round questions to close up. So, as an integrator, and this is from Juiced on LinkedIn, as an integrator, we need the management to take their role and responsibility. So that's interesting to hear it from a system integrator saying, hey, we can't do this all for you. You need to own this executive team. So thanks for the feedback there.
And again, I think that goes back to the executive strategy sessions and the communications. A lot of times people don't take that extra step to defining what your role is, what your responsibility is, not just as, part of the executive team, but as a change agent, as part of that, stakeholder team. What does this mean? What am I supposed to do? I've heard that a lot of times over and over. And if you don't take the time to define that and have the conversation, of course, they're not going to gravitate towards what they need to do. They don't know. They don't know what they don't know. It's about that whole, unknown, fear factor, etc. So that's what we do. We help people understand.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the last 5 minutes here, I'm gonna hit a couple of speed round questions. I may not ask. I may not ask for elaboration here. But the first one I'll cover is, and this actually alludes to a comment that was made earlier, which we didn't get to, but it's the whole concept of best of breed systems versus single ERP. If you had to pick one that you think is the best answer for companies in general, which is always dangerous to do, right? To generalize, but let's just generalize for fun. What do you think is better, single ERP system or best of breed?
You want to generalize, Eric? I don't even know you right now.
But notice I'm not the one generalizing.
Right,
I'm asking others to do it. I can't do it. I want other people to do it. So Clifford says single ERP. Oh, Teresa with the classic consulting response of it depends.
That's Eric's response. What would
See?
Eric do? That's my
Yeah.
Everyone's doing my dirty work for me. They're saying it depends. They're just,
I've got depends as well.
what did that say?
But when possible, single ERP, single
Yes.
platform.
ERP. Nate, you said single ERP as well. And then what did you have, Michelle?
Oh, where did it go? Hold on.
Sorry, I missed it. Muted.
I'm just kidding.
Hi, Toby.
Oh,
That's funny. Shoot.
Also single.
Single ERP. Okay.
Yeah.
So most responses were single ERP. Is that what you said too, Clifford? I already forgot what you said.
yeah, he
I
did.
did, yes.
Okay. All right. We're going to leave it at that. I won't ask you to elaborate on that. I'd love to hear the audience feedback though. Single ERP, your best of breed. How about this? Cloud versus on-premise systems.
Ooh.
Depends. Hashtag
Depends.
it depends.
Ooh, you should have that trending. That would be
I
amazing.
really do try. It's my, it's my overall goal is to hashtag.
Mine's
Hashtag,
prettier.
I like that.
Love the cloud.
Not surprisingly, I think everyone so far has said cloud. We're waiting for Clifford. Yep, cloud.
Prop again.
With the lightning bolt.
Cloud.
With a little bit of lightning.
Right, with lightning. Right. There is some risk, right? So that's actually a good graphic here. A good
Yeah.
still risk. And then Greg saying cloud with his balloon.
Cloud.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, and I suppose that's not a super controversial question. I was hoping that at least one person would say, on-prem mainframe AS400 based, but we weren't getting any takers on that. Okay, one last question. Let's do this verbally. I don't want to make you write this out, but why should companies consider cloud? I mean, what's the main reason that an organization should go with the cloud? Maybe I'll start with you, Greg.
Multi-tenancy, especially in the new cloud systems, makes it so that you have automatic upgrades, updates. The next 5 years that your organization is running on a cloud system is going to be, just continuous rather than stop and start like it has been in the past. Very important.
Yeah. Yep. That's a good point. How about you, Clifford? Why cloud?
Yes, so I think specifically, Eric, in the back office space, or what's typically called systems of record, that's pretty standard. It's commodity business processes. There's no differentiation there. It doesn't help you win as an organization. It's your foundation, and you want that to hum. You want to be able to divert your funds, your energy, your leadership focus and attention into the areas of differentiation. So you don't want to be preoccupied with sorting out standard ERP. That stuff should all just be in the cloud and should just work. Free up resources to focus on innovation, etc. So that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah. Yep. Well put. Well, we are right at the top of the hour, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time, especially those on this panel discussion that probably have a call or a client call starting right now. So we're gonna wrap up now, but I want to thank everyone on the panel here for being here. Thanks a lot. This is a fun format, and thank you to the audience too for being here with the great questions. We'll probably try this again sometime, and that was fun. And Teresa held up her card saying this was fun, so I'm glad you thought so too. And love to hear any feedback from the audience as well if you have it. So thanks everyone for being here. Have a great day, and we will see you all next time. We do these live streams every Tuesday at the same time. So love to see you here next week as well. Hope you have a great week in the meantime, and we will see you all soon. Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Cheers, everybody. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You too. Cheers. Bye.